There is a creepy Dollar Tree Valentine's balloon hovering in the background, but that's okay. We're going to roll with it. Today is a special video for the channel. It is a milestone as I have hit 300 subscribers today, and we're going to celebrate that with another VHS video review. So today's video, Drums Along the Mohawk, 1939, directed by iconic director John Ford, in Technicolor. So this particular film, I'm going to jump right into the review because of my phone is running out of memory. I am 5 out of 5 on this movie. Now, this style and era of movies is not going to be for everyone. I was talking to a friend of mine a while back, and she just couldn't get into anything earlier than the 90s. But if you're a connoisseur, you will like the golden age of cinema and see it for what it is. So Rotten Tomatoes gave this movie 82%, 7 out of 10 on IMDb, and Google users are 86%, but I was 5 out of 5. I grew up with these types of movies. My mother raised me right. She loves the classics. Thanks, Mom. And Henry Fonda, Claudette Colbert. Wait, Colbert? Hang on. Yeah, maybe she's related to Steven. I don't know. So anyway, this movie has 103-minute runtime, 1939. So I think The Wizard of Oz came out that year, and I believe Gone with the Wind, all color, but there were still a lot of black and white films before that and after that. Obviously, black and white was still a popular medium to shoot in, but color has a very distinct feel in this early era of color, and it's awesome. I had recently, within the last year, watched another John Ford classic, Man Who Shot Liberty Valance, which I believe came out in the 60s, but he filmed it in black and white as far as I can remember. So maybe he toggled back and forth. But this is kind of like a historical dramatization based off of a book by Walter Edmonds that came out in 1936. So it's a frontier movie, 18th century, right prior to the Civil War or leading up in the midst of the Civil War. The movie takes place in 1776, and it follows the Henry Fonda character, whose name eludes me if I didn't take good enough notes. He marries, right in the beginning of the movie, Claudette Colbert, and they're more kind of like East Coast people, like right on the coast where all the outposts and major cities were, and then they move out into upstate New York as settlers in the area. And within the last year, I had recently read David McAuliffe's recently departed, this was his last book that he published, The Pioneers, which talks about the settling of the Ohio Territory. And this book was like, to me, it kind of gave me a visual aid, because talk about tragedies. You're dealing with the Mohawk Nation coming in, massacring all the settlers, slaughtering them, also working with the British, the redcoats as it were, and they're trying to kind of, these loyalists are trying to unsettle all these revolutionary Continental Army supporters. So it's an intense movie. It just feels dated because of, I feel like the way people spoke when they acted a lot of the times back in the day, they kind of had that like transcontinental accent, and they just talked in a certain way. Like, I feel like nobody today talks. It feels dated, but then it's also kind of like a cinematic classic, I guess. There's some really good bit actors in there. At one point, the Henry Fonda character and his wife, their house and farm is torched by the Mohawks, and they end up moving in with this widow woman who had a stone-built house, which was like rare in the area. And she was exceptionally good, just this tough frontiers woman. And Spindrift. It's just a hard movie to watch at some points. It did stir up a lot of emotion. There's a lot of, I don't want to say violence, because of these movies of this time period weren't necessarily violent. Side note, I had shot almost an entire bit on this film yesterday, but then I started having phone issues, so now I'm trying to squeeze it in. It's a very brief review. I'm not going to make it too long if I just don't know how much memory I'm going to have left. But I do recommend that this book, if you're into early American history as well, The Pioneers, I picked up a thrifted copy for a couple of bucks. And then he also has another book that's, I believe this was his Pulitzer Prize winning book, 1776. If you want to kind of go deeper into American history in that 18th century era, I recommend this book as well. David McAuliffe, excellent writer. You kind of feel like you're there in the midst of the action. And just early American cinema in general, from the golden age of Hollywood. If you can, there are some gems out there. Another one that I had reviewed in the past 5 or 6 months, Captain's Courageous, which I think came out a year before this. So there's some good stuff out there. And if you like Westerns and you kind of like John Ford because he was just an iconic writer, this movie, you will enjoy it. And then on a side note, if you had seen my review a couple of reviews back with me and my wife talking about that Fabelman's Spielberg movie, kind of his biopic, he kind of touches base where they have a fictionalized, maybe it was based on a true part of his life. He meets John Ford, and John Ford kind of gives him this directorial advice about how everything in the horizon is interesting. And then I noticed in this movie, I saw what he meant. There's like this one scene where like the sun is setting and there's this beautiful orange and red sky, and the people walking are way down the bottom of the frame, and he just has the camera angled up, and you see this beautiful Technicolor sunset. And it's just, he really laid out his films and cast people very, very well. Like I said, there's a lot of cool little sidebar actors that kind of make this movie a neat movie. Is it historically accurate? I feel like compared to like the research that people do today, I'd watched the whole Outlander television show and read the books. And I feel like if you look at that type of costuming, it's probably much more authentic than like, you think of Back to the Future Part 3, where the 1950s Doc dresses Marty to go back to 1885, and it just wasn't as authentic as it should have been. This is very much like a studio movie, but it was filmed outside as well, and on location, I believe. I didn't do my due diligence on that, so I apologize. Until next time, get out there, watch affordable movies in any format that you can. I'm trying to put out as much content as I can, and these VHSs are dirt cheap, so that's why most of my reviews are on VHS. I do have theater movies that I see in the theater as well, and I also have a horde of DVDs to get into and talk about. So if you are interested to hear what I have to say, like and subscribe, tell your friends, make a request. Maybe I'll get around to reviewing your request as well. Until next time, we'll see you then.